Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning in to L3 Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful land of enchantment. And today's date is Wednesday, April 8th, 2020. Early morning. People are still napping. And just see how everyone's doing. Yeah, it's just interesting when you hear about the COVID-19, 24-hour excuse for everything. Very similar to 9/11. Having people getting ticketed for roaming around. Pastors getting arrested because they violated the emergency order or an executive order. And folks want to tell you about firearm safety. It's just very amazing. The wheels of tyranny continues. And it really dawns on me when I see folks declaring themselves as tyrannical apple polishers. When the time goes bend over, men will go, how far, please? Absolutely. Snitching, licking, apple polishing, buttock kissing, whatever you want to call it. Yep, so, when government knows best, it turns to crap. It's just one of those areas, folks. How can see the order wants to manifest, do everything on a one global perspective. Want you to train us a bunch of little boys and girls, bunch of rats coming out of a hole. Find the cheese, you peasants. Well, speaking of this, do a few things here. This one came from the Rutherford Institute yesterday. And here it says, the U.S. Supreme Court upholds blank check policing. Allows cops to stop cars registered to unlicensed owners, whether or not owners are driving. And here's what it has to say here. In Washington, D.C., an 8-1 ruling that empowers police to carry out dubious traffic stops and pave the way for further abuses of law enforcement's blank check policing privileges. The U.S. Supreme Court has upheld the police practice of stopping and questioning drivers if their cars are registered to unlicensed owners, in the absence of specific wrongdoing by the driver and whether or not the owners are behind the wheel. Such vehicles are often driven by licensed family members and friends, with Justice Sonia Sotomayor as the lone dissenter. The court justified its decision in Kansas versus Glover. Interesting. I'm not really too crazy. I was on an abominable pointy, by the way, which I'm not really too enthused when it comes to the right to bear arms. However, I know when it comes to drug wars and all that, she has some memorable points. But always gotta watch for these black robe individuals. So, as it reads here, about the decision in Kansas versus Glover, on the basis that police can assume that persons whose licenses have been revoked are criminals who will continue to violate the law. Assume. If you assume in front of a police officer, they get offended, but they can assume to you, that's exceptionalism. The Rutherford Institute filed an amicus brief in the case arguing that allow police to stop a vehicle whenever the owner is unlicensed violates the Fourth Amendment, requires that a stop be supported by specific evidence that a driver engaged in unlawful conduct. In their brief, Rutherford Institute attorneys have asked the Supreme Court to reject the state's proposed rule that because some drivers disregard license suspension orders, police are justified in detaining any vehicle owned by a person whose license is suspended. All right, detained. So, affiliate attorneys D. Alicia Hickok, Mark D. Tatachi, and Victoria L. Andrews of Drinker, Biddle, and Wreath LLP in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, assisted the Rutherford Institute in advancing the argument in Glover. This kind of traffic stop contributes to what I call blank check policing, in which police officers have been given free rein to pull anyone over for a variety of dubious reasons, as long as they can provide a palatable pretext for doing so, said constitutional attorney John W. Whitehead, president of the Rutherford Institute and author of Battlefield America, The War on the American People. This free-handed approach to traffic stops now allowed by the Supreme Court has resulted in drivers being stopped for windows that are too heavily tinted, for driving too fast, driving too slow, failing to maintain speed, improper lane changes, distracted driving, screeching a car's tires, and leaving a park door open for too long. The case arose after Deputy Mark Maher, while on patrol in his police car, called in the license plate number of a Chevrolet pickup to the Kansas Department of Revenue and was told that the vehicle registered owner, Charles Glover, had his driver's license revoked, although Maher had not observed any traffic or a criminal offense by the driver and did not know who was driving. Maher initiated a traffic stop of the vehicle based solely on the assumption that Glover was driving the vehicle. Glover was, in fact, driving the vehicle and subsequently charged with driving as a habitual offender, which carries a penalty at least 90 days in jail and a fine of at least $1,500. Glover filed a motion to suppress any evidence obtained as a result of the warrantless stop of his vehicle, arguing that the deputy did not have reasonable suspicion to support the seizure of the pickup and so violate the Fourth Amendment's prohibition of unreasonable searches and seizures. The case was eventually appealed to the Supreme Court of Kansas, which was ruled the stop illegal because the deputy's assumption that Glover was driving a vehicle registered to him at the time the vehicle was stopped was not a reasonable suspicion. On the appeal, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled the deputy had reasonable suspicion for the stop because it was common sense that persons whose licenses are revoked will continue to break the law by driving. So, very interesting there. And it really dawns on me because this should just went to a state issue, okay? Nothing else. And what's interesting about this but everyone's like using the whole, what the 10th Amendment Center goes in corporate doctrine. And it's really mind-boggling when you do these things. And I know as well in the Kansas Constitution talks about searches and seizures, and I believe it's very similar. I'm looking at it right now. It's very similar to they have a thing called a Bill of Rights. Interesting. Let's see what it has to say about this. This is the Bill of Rights right now, okay? And the rest of it is Article 1, but they have a thing called Bill of Rights. I'm just looking at this here. And it says here, well, Section 1, all men are possessed of equal and inalienable natural rights, among which are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Okay. And we'll just see what it has to say about, I'm just looking down here. Searches and seizures. Article 15, Section 15 of the Bill of Rights. The right of the people to be secure in their persons and property against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but but on probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons and property to be seized. And remember, license, according to the Black's Law Dictionary, is a document, a permit that's approved by competent authority. All right, and this is very intriguing because a lot of now people are saying, "Hey, travel," because was Mr. Glover a commercial driver? He could have used the right to travel, traveling, sir. As one of the areas, so it's just disappointing that it has but actually bypass, like going over the state and have the feds try to solve it. It's only an opinion as well. Okay, just to let you know, it's just an opinion of just a viewpoint. That's all it is. And it gets really, disheartening when you have all these individuals trying to see things a little bit bigger. And of course, you can look at the documents and the opinion of the Supreme Court and the amicus curiae on this case is you guys actually read yourselves. Go by certain cases, especially the cases on here, which is very interesting, and it's good to know these things. So it's all on the same website, and like if you let tyranny, if you let this pursue, you could be next. So we always got to always have to question these things on police's duties. So I'm just gonna do, and I want to do something. I'm gonna do another one here in a moment. I should have just threw this in here too, because this next one was actually from Reason.com. Came out yesterday as well. This here, to enforce social distancing rules, cops find a Pennsylvania woman who was driving alone. And it says, not every apparent violation of a quarantine order is a risk to other people, and not all need to be or can be equally enforced. This was Eric Boehm has to say about this. Anita Schaefer went for a drive around her neighborhood on Sunday and came home with a $200 fine for violating Pennsylvania stay-at-home order that's meant to contain the spread of COVID-19. Schaefer told Penn Live that she went for a leisurely drive simply to get out of the house, but ended up getting pulled over by two state police officers as she was returning home. The cops said her taillight was out, but the ticket they ended up issuing to Schaefer that she violated the state's Disease Control and Prevention Act of 1955 and failed to abide by the order of the governor and the Secretary of Health issued to control the spread of a communicable disease. It sounds like this woman was prostituting herself for just fornicating around. Okay, that's what it sounds like here. Okay, so as it continues here, he asked me if I was aware of the Stay-at-Home Act. Schaefer told Penn's Jan Murphy, "I'm aware of it, but I didn't know it pertained to just driving. Indeed, why should it? The key to stopping the spread of coronavirus, we've been told by public health officials, is social distancing. That way, staying away from interpersonal contact as much as possible. A single person sitting in their own car is no less isolated than someone sitting around alone inside their house would be. In fact, if Schaefer's story is true, the only interpersonal contact she had while driving on Sunday was with the officers who pulled her over. The troopers have been encouraged to use contacts with the public as opportunities to reinforce the necessity to abide by stay-at-home orders. Is how Ryan Tarkowski, a spokesman for the state police, explained the encounter. But maybe at the same time, when contacts with the public are considered a public health risk, the cops could find a better strategy. Unfortunately, Schaefer's story is not a single one. A paddleboarder in California was arrested last week for issuing the state-at-home order. Apparently, being surrounded by open water is insufficient in social distancing. In New York City, where the COVID outbreak is the most severe right now, police have been arresting people for violating social distancing orders. Technically, the arrests for were obstructing government administration, unlawful assembly, and disorderly conduct to intercept reports and packing them in crowded jails. Heck, what about social distancing? How contradicting. Double standards are the right thing. But remember, we're the state. We work for the government. Exceptionalism has to be honored. How is this helping? There has been much discussion about whether the treatment for the coronavirus outbreak is worse than the disease itself. Any serious accounting of the pandemic must take into account the immense economic damage and widespread unemployment caused by the stay-at-home orders and mandatory shutdowns. And corollary to that discussion is the question of how aggressively shutdown orders should be policed. Yes, they are necessary to stop the spread of the disease and cannot be ignored, but you risk tipping beyond protecting the public and actually increasing the risk of spreading the disease with aggressive enforcement. What if one of the officers who gave Schaefer a ticket was an asymptomatic carrier? Nearly 2,000 cops in New York have tested positive for COVID-19, which suggests that you might be more likely to contract the disease while getting written up for leaving your house to go or run or drive than you simply been allowed to go or for a run or drive. And that's something. That says nothing of the civil liberties violation that occurred when Schaefer was pulled over for doing absolutely nothing that threatened public health. If anything, driving for recreation should be encouraged right now. It is a way for people to get out of the house and have a bit of fun, especially with roads being so empty, gas prices falling for near record lows, which maintaining social distances. As local and state governments try to find the right balance between enforcing mandatory quarantines and respecting civil liberties, they should pursue policies that are driven by science, that are proportionate to the risks involved, and that do not last any longer than necessary, says Elizabeth Goyden, Director for Liberty and National Security at the Brennan Center for Justice, a legal policy think tank. She worries that ramped up scrutiny of every detail of everyday life could become a new normal that took away from freedom. Exactly. Fear is the greatest weapon. Conditions, mind control. Come on, peasants, we will think for you. Deal with it. Okay, something to think, something to contemplate. Could we start to see, once people get socialized, this idea that governments have this power? Could we see governments a little more willing to use that power? She asked. I think we're going to have to be extremely careful, extremely vigilant, that we do not allow this time in our history to break down the barriers to powers the government should not have. How many folks remember 9/11? If you haven't learned the lessons from that, you are obtuse. Police should have the power to stop and question everyone who leaves their home in apparent contravention of a stay-home order. Should not, exactly. Even in a time when those orders are in place, the default assumption cannot become that movement is illegal unless approved by the state. Yes, the police may have a role to play in preventing larger gatherings and other actual violations of social distancing guidelines, but every apparent violation of a quarantine order is a risk for other people. For that matter, not all violations of the quarantine order can be enforced. There simply aren't enough cops to do so. And if enforcement is going to be arbitrary, then it will be no surprise to see some communities and individuals targeted for reasons that have nothing to do with public health. And for the heaven's sakes, don't call the cops on your neighbors. And I've been hearing stories about that. People like that should get smacked upside the head or challenged to a duel, symbolically speaking. Schaefer tells Penn Live that she plans to appeal the ticket and fine. When this is all over, court should have no trouble clearing her name. And of course, there's a nice video about this. That's our recommendation. And one of the things you gotta look at too, friends, is it's getting pretty confoundedly acidine when you look at these things, and it's like, when did Pennsylvania, the people of Pennsylvania, has to belly up to the state? Well, bottom line is this: if you actually read Pennsylvania Constitution, Article 1, of course, which is about the Declaration of Rights of the Commonwealth. I'm going to get that in a moment here. Oop, here it is. Bam. And if I'm correct, I think there's a enumerated rights as well. But we'll just look at these things, and we'll just look at this here, Declaration of Rights on my ballotpedia.org. Don't worry, I'm going to leave these footnotes on my speaker page. I like when it says here that general, great, essential principles of liberties and free government may be recognized and unalterably established. We declare that. Well, let's see here what they have to say about Article 1. Inherited rights of mankind. All men are born equally free and independent and have certain inherited and indivisible rights, among those of enjoying and defending life and liberty, of acquiring, possessing, and protecting property and reputation, and pursuing their own happiness. So you can't drive around and get out of the house during this whole COVID epidemic, which it leads to a pandemic on a tyrannical basis. You could be condemned. So I'm just gonna go all the way down here on I think there's one more right here. And another thing too, even habeas corpus. So this order does contradict that as well, because it's only good for case of rebellion or invasion. Okay, so that's section 14, article 1. I'm gonna go all the way down here, and of course, this order is not implemented in the contracts. It's an impairment of contract. Section 17, and of course we'll just go all the way down here. Go all the way down here. I think it's 25. To guard against the transgressions of high powers which we have delegated, we declare that everything in this article is expected out of the general powers of government and shall forever remain inviolate. So, this little order that was passed in 1955, which is the Disease Control, Pennsylvania's Disease Control Prevention Act of 1955, contradicts that law. Yeah, can they actually refute that? They can't, because there's no merit. So it's a good challenge. I think Ms. Heller can she can actually make that happen. You know, Anita Schaefer can make that happen. So that'd be a great thing to do some battles here. You know, constitutional battles. So it's one of those areas, my friend. You always gotta look at these things. So, and even it's funny about going back to the whole case. Oh, sorry about that. The case that occurred in Kansas. It's just wow, you know, and in Kansas's Bill of Rights, we're gonna find out where it's at. I think they have a thing very similar to powers obtained to the people, Section 20. This enumeration of rights shall not be construed to impair or deny others retained by the people, and all powers not herein delegated remain with the people. So just to add that to it. with the case in Kansas. So, the Glover case for sure. All right, well, I'm going to do one more here. This is very intriguing. And this came from the Twitter page of a commissioner who's mayor, because Mayor Dale V.C. Holness, and I have seen him a few times. I know who he is. And, of course, he's mayor. He's selected by the commissioners. He's like a chairman. Okay, he's considered a chairman. And as a broad update on he joins Mayors Against Illegal Guns. And we all know Michael Bloomberg, the gyno-infested buffoon from New York, who was mayor at the time, and a proud member of the Council of Foreign Relations, a global governmental entity. This has to say here, in an effort to combat senseless gun violence in Broward County and across America, Mayor Dale V.C. Holness has joined Mayors Against Illegal Guns, the national coalition of more than 1,000 current and former mayors committed to ending gun violence. Members of Mayors Against Illegal Guns are committed to protecting their communities by keeping illegal guns off their streets and out of their schools. Yeah, firearm-free zones don't really work. These leaders advocate for life-saving gun safety reforms from local programs and municipal ordinance to local, state, and federal legislation. While their backgrounds may differ, they speak with one voice, united against gun violence for the sake of public safety. And this is what he has to say. We must do what we can to stop these senseless shootings, said Broward County, Florida Mayor Dale V.C. Holness. Together with mayors across the country, Mayor Holness will work to find innovative new ways to advance the following principles. And here's what he has to say. Advance enforcement strategies that ensure public safety for residents in communities disproportionately affected by gun violence. Advocate for gun safety legislation at the local, state, and federal level. Collect data to better understand gun violence in our communities. Advance policies that reduce firearm suicides. Invest in victim services and labor level violence intervention programs. Advocate for comprehensive tracing of crime guns. Support strategies to minimize shooting by police. Use the court to advance gun safety. Use the courts. So you're going to have, this could be considered a form of judicial supremacy. Use the purchasing power to improve gun safety. Invite other cities to join in this effort. Hoorah, hoorah, hoorah. Man. Real shame. The disturbing thing about this, he didn't learn the lessons of what happened in Broward County with the two horrific events. Okay, once at the Fort Lauderdale International Airport and Stoneman Douglas. There was certain laws in the books that didn't prevent anything. And of course, if you all know, Broward County has an ordinance, I think it's 18-94, 5-day waiting period, because under the local options. Was it 84, 94, 86, or 96? Okay, you know what? I'll have to look at that. I'll be back one moment. Yes, it is. It's 18-96. Florida, it's supposed to be Broward County, has that 5-day waiting period. 5 business days, excluding weekends and holidays. Okay, so those are like some interesting facts about that, and we could definitely check that out. 18-96. So I'll definitely one moment here. Oh, I think I messed up. No, actually I didn't. I did it. Boom. Yeah, 18-96. That's the name of the game here. And it's huge under law enforcement. How sweet is that? Well, definitely will keep that handy. Okay. Ooh. Oh yeah, right here. Yep, Article 7, 5-day waiting period. So I will put that in the memo. And the fuck, I voted against those local options in 1998. So it tells you, yeah, 18-96. So definitely you could just check that out. I'll just leave that up there for you guys. So so I had to put my 2 cents in. So what I done, I sent a nice little reply on this matter. I'm just waiting for all this. This is real slow. Got a slow signal today. So how many people have run around? Yeah, definitely 5-day waiting period. So I'll leave it up there as well. And yeah, so this is what I have to say. Come on. Shoot. Come on. Shoot. Alright, right there. Bam. Yeah. And it's funny because it was sent to every town. Twitter page, every town. So I sent my replies to the Broward commissioners, Holness, and every town, like the whole common sense and crap like that, or common control. So it says here, Mayor Holness, how about the beautiful people of Broward County take the initiative on having infinite love thy fellow neighbor instead of ostracizing, censuring Big Pharma on promoting psychotropic drugs which are impairing the residents' judgment. It's happening everywhere, folks, okay? If you just really pay attention, there's this thing called SSRI cases. So you can trust me. You should look that up, and it's amazing. So I went on here. Addressing the truth on stating its first line of defense is from a law-abiding person and announcing the police protection myth. Well, technically, the police aren't obligated on protecting an individual. What you gotta do is look at for Florida statute 768.28, or the case of Wong versus City of Miami, and of course the victim's children, parents against the Broward County sheriffs and the Broward County school system. What happened at Storm and Douglas. And I went on here, returning our police officers as peace delegates or peace officers instead of being frivolous revenue ticketing and arresting coordinators. That's frivolous for both sides. Because remember, blank check policing. Arrest many people as possible. Get the system, get the revenue going. All right. And now continue on here in the next one, because it was way over the tweet, so I had to really consolidate it. Advocating gun safety at the local level, local, state, and federal level does contradict our natural rights and breaches your oath of office under Article 2, Section 5 of the Florida Constitution. Furthermore, firearm safety is an individual responsibility, and educating others is fundamental. The memo you've displayed can impede Broward resolution on affirming the civil rights of all residents of Broward County, and recommend the entire commission board on re-examine this document at your best availability. Thank you, and with kind regards. And so the reason I had to address that, the Broward resolution on affirming of all civil rights of Broward, affirming the civil rights of all Broward County, I see natural rights, okay, but when people actually learn these, you have to really look at, about what it says here. Whereas Broward County has a long and distinguished history of protecting and expanding the civil rights of liberties, civil rights and civil liberties of its residents. Let me just go on a little further. It's mainly about the about the Patriot obstruction, about the Patriot Act and Emergency Health Powers Act, Domestic Security Enhancement Act, but it's very similar. On the sixth provision, it says here, the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution and the Constitution of Florida guarantee those living in the United States the following rights: freedom of speech, assembly, and privacy, equality before the law, and the presumption of innocence, access to counsel and due process in judicial proceedings, and protection from unreasonable search and seizures. And we believe his liberties may be threatened by the USA Patriot Act, the Domestic Security Enhancement Act of 2003, and the Florida Emergency Health Powers Act. So I'm gonna bypass that, and like I said, it's here about like 9 and 10 about Broward County citizens has remained committed to protection of civil rights and liberties for all citizens of Broward County, and the Board of Commissioners believe that a threat to anyone's person's constitutional rights is a threat to the rights of all. So this is why you have to look at it this way, okay? Because it even says here, now therefore be resolved that the Broward County Commission affirms the rights of all people, including United States citizens and citizens of other nations within the county, in accordance with the Bill of Rights, the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And it said, like I said right below here, that the Broward County Commission calls upon county officials and employees to respect the civil rights and liberties of all members of this community, including those who are citizens of other nations, and that the Broward County Commission calls on private citizens, including residents, employers, educators, and business owners, to demonstrate similar respect for civil rights and civil liberties. Even though it's mainly about those three areas about terrorism and forced inoculation, but when you read these provisions, it goes a lot further than what it is. So that's why I made sure I sent them a copy of this link on the Twitter. I'll make sure all those worshipers of his read it in its entirety, because if you're going to breach one person's rights, yours could be next. And it affects us all, regardless. So hopefully, you'll read it, and that'll be really good. Alright, my friends, that is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us on social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, if you send something interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence with decorum. Furthermore, I shall leave all the footnotes of this episode on my Spreaker page. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love. May your guardian spirits be with you.